Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. We knew that President Biden was speaking with President Zelensky of Ukraine, and we just got a readout of exactly what was discussed. The two presidents spoke about the continuing efforts of the United States and allies to deliver military, economic, and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine and to impose severe costs on Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. That's according to the White House. Joining us now is Republican Congressman John Katko of New York. He's the ranking member of the House Committee on Homeland Security. Mr. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. This just got across the wire just now. Give us your initial reaction about what we're doing in Ukraine, what more we need to do.
Well, my initial reaction is that it's a step in the right direction. I mean, I was concerned before Russia invaded Ukraine that we weren't doing enough, and we clearly were not, because Putin was not deterred by anything we said or did. And a lot of us wanted to send lethal aid to Ukraine before Russia invaded, and the president resisted. Now that the genie's out of the bottle and Russia is in Ukraine, the president is doing a pretty decent job of ratcheting up the sanctions and trying to tighten the economic impact that it's having on Russia, which is a good thing.
Let's talk, Congressman, about specifically one area that I know you have direct jurisdictional responsibility for, and that is the cybersecurity aspect of this. We've been all concerned. In fact, President Biden has warned about possible cyber attacks from Russia as part of this. We haven't seen them yet. Give us your appraisal of where we are in the United States and with our companies, and for that matter, Europe as well, in our cyber defenses.
Sure, David. Well, first of all, Russia is one of the worst offenders on the world stage for cyber attacks. Many of the cyber attacks we've had in recent years in the U.S., the major ones, have been sponsored by Russian entities within the country of Russia. They're basically separate entities within Russia, but they act under the imprimatur of Putin and the Russian regime. And like the Colonial Pipeline attack can be traced back to them. The Kaseya attack, the Solar Winds attack, and the JBS attack on the beef industry. Those are all examples. And, a lot of people think that those were tests that Putin was running to see how vulnerable our defenses are and what we would do in response. And quite frankly, back then, we didn't do anything. We didn't really respond, even though we knew they were Russia state-sponsored attacks. So going forward, we have a very big threat. And the more that Russia's backed into a corner, the more that they're hurting economically, the more likely it is that Putin is going to lash out against American cyber defenses. And so what we're doing about it is everything we're doing at Homeland Security is focused on cyber, an awful lot of it. 5 years ago, the biggest threat to our country was ISIS-inspired massive acts of violence here. That's no longer the case. The biggest threat to our country from a Homeland Security standpoint, and really national security, is cyber actors attacking us. And at Homeland Security, that's what we're doing 24/7.
So, Congressman, in this area of cyber, one of the challenges is not just the United States government. It's not just like our military. We also have so many private enterprises, obviously, with extensive computer systems. We heard President Biden earlier really invoke patriotism in asking corporate CEOs to really beef up their cyber. Since that, are we coordinating with private companies, and do we have a sense that they are increasing their defenses?
Yeah, absolutely. We have been coordinating with them. And several years ago, myself and former Chairman Mike McCall and others pushed to get what's called the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency up and running at Homeland Security. It's now a multi-billion-dollar agency, and it needs more resources. But what CISA is, which is their nickname, CISA is meant to do is to interact with the private sector and the government sector to make sure that our systems are secure as possible. And it's basically completely based on exchanging of information, exchanging of malware, and figuring out how to patch the attacks when they happen, respond to them quicker, and then really kind of reviewing the systems in the private sector, those who want our help, to find the holes and have them patch them. And I guess the biggest message we have with CISA right now is assume that you're going to be the next one attacked and act accordingly. Don't assume that you're not going to be the next one attacked, like a lot of companies hope for. And so we have things like on CISA.gov called Shields Up. Any entity can go to that, and at Shields Up they can get help as to how to help their systems, how to make their systems more secure. We also have something we just passed into law called incident reporting. And basically, it's going to be mandating that private sector companies, when they have significant cyber attacks, within 72 hours must report those attacks to CISA. not because we want to smack those companies. We don't. We want to help them secure their systems, but also learn from those attacks how to better strengthen systems for everyone nationwide.
Congressman, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, because one of the things we've learned from this readout that I had not seen before is that President Biden apparently said that it's the intention of the United States government to provide $500 million in direct budgetary support to Ukraine. You haven't heard about that. I've just heard about it. But do you have an initial reaction? I won't hold you to it, but do you think there would be sentiment in Congress to back that sort of support for Ukraine?
Well, listen, there's a tremendous amount of support for Ukraine, and we've been getting briefings almost weekly on Ukraine, and we're going to get another one today at 4:45. And so if they need our resources, the desire is there to give it to them. And so I don't know exactly what the president is referring to, but, if they need the resources, we want to give it to them. You can't look and listen to Zelensky like we have, like when he addressed Congress, and not just feel some kind of emotion for what they're going through and how we can help them more. But quite frankly, we've got to do better in the future, especially with respect to China, to make more of a deterrent factor on the front end and let them understand the cost if they go into Taiwan, China, for example, or if Russia goes into another country. We can't stand for it, and we got to make sure they understand that and that there's sufficient deterrent. We didn't have that prior to Ukraine, but we need to have it now going forward on all fronts.
Congressman, finally, let me broaden this out just a little bit, and that's to the president's budget that was proposed on Monday this week. There was an increase in there for defense spending. Have you had an opportunity to sort of take a look at that initially? I understand that those budgets are sort of aspirational, but do you think that President Biden's heading in the right direction? Is there enough in there for our defense?
No, the president's budget doesn't even cover the cost of inflation. So in effect, it's a net decrease in spending for defense at a time when we're on the verge of possibly a war with Russia. And God forbid, I hope that doesn't happen, but we may, right? And on top of that, we have this menace of China that we've really got to be ready for. So basically, we are basically having to prepare to deal with two major military possible conflicts in the world, in Europe and in China. And the president, in effect, with his recommendations in his budget, are saying we should cut them because it's not even keeping up with inflation. Not only should we be keeping up with inflation, we should probably be plussing up the budget to make sure that our resources are there and we are fully ready for anything that comes before us. The American people deserve that, and the world needs it.
Congressman, thank you so much. You're always so helpful, and I really appreciate you being willing to really go with the news as it broke here. That's Congressman.
No sweat.
John Katko. I know for you it isn't. That's right. Congressman